Hello there everyone, this is Melissa Furness with you for another art demo. So, today I'm going to do a demonstration which combines something that I know really very well along with something I don't know so very much. I find this to be a really great way to push my creative ideas to new levels. You can really discover something fresh with your work when you push yourself out of your comfort zone. So first I'm going to draw a portrait, also someone I know very well, my daughter Pip here. And then I'm going to take that drawing into Procreate, which I have just purchased, along with this snazzy new stylus pen, and work with it on my daughter's iPad here, which she graciously is letting me use for this process. So hey, let's see what happens. Okay, so we're ready to go. The first thing you want to do is just get a rough outline of the shape of the face. So as you know, some people have different shapes according to their jawline. Some people have a little bit more square or oval or maybe heart-shaped. Hers looks a little bit more oval, so I've got an oval drawing on my paper. The next thing I do is take a look at how, the face has two sides to it. It's mirrored. One side and the other side pretty much reflect each other. So that's going to be the first line that I draw. See, straight down the middle of the face. And so that would be the second step, which I've got down here on my paper. The next step is to start to measure out where the features are located on that particular person's head. So in general, you'll find that if you want to find basically how, the eyes come across the entire head and draw that line. So the way to do that is I use my pencil tool as a nice way to measure. I'll put the top of the pencil at the top of the head there. And that includes, going all the way up to where you imagine the actual skull ending. And then I put my thumb at the bottom of the chin. And then what I do is I look for where that measurement of the eyes are. And so you can see it's basically halfway down the full measurement of the head. That's something that I find that students make mistakes with quite often. That they tend to want to make the forehead much smaller than it is. And now we have the birds chirping. It's very exciting here. Pippa might be just a princess. So I've got the line of the eyes, halfway down there. So now I want to find that measurement of where the bottom of the nose is there. This is actually kind of fun. I'm kind of just drawing on my daughter's face here in the camera. It's kind of interesting, but it shows you really clearly, how I do these measurements. So if I measure down from the eye line to the bottom of the chin, you'll see that the nose, again, hits halfway in between that space. And then from there, take a careful look of where the lips sit. So some people have a smaller space there, some people have a larger space. It helps if the person isn't making faces while you're trying to make your drawing as well. So you have to do your best not to tell jokes and don't make them laugh, because that gets to be a problem. Oops.
I made myself laugh.
Then next, after that, you want to find some of the horizontal measurements of the face. So we've got the eye line, we've got the bottom of the nose, we have where the mouth sits. And then you want to find the actual sort of measurement of the eyes from one end to the other. So you can see there's one of hers, and I don't know, it's basically, the width of the tip of that pencil, right? So if each one of those eyes is that width, you could probably also fit another one of those eyes in between the eyes. And then it's kind of like half of an eye out to the edge. So then I can make little tiny marks on my paper that define those measurements. So I'm using the lighter pencil because then I can kind of erase it later, or, what I do is I actually like having that bit of energy behind my drawing. But, just making a little mark really helps to save your time and energy on, making sure you get it right the first time rather than making mistakes as you go. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is take a look at, where the end of the nostrils are there. Comes another dog. Woohoo! So either side, so you have that whole width of the nose, right? So if you look and draw a line from from like the corner of the inner part of the one eye straight down, you can see that the nostril is pretty close in alignment to that, maybe slightly in. So I want to draw a line down to define that on each side where the end of the nostril would be. The other thing that you can do then too is to take a look at the mouth. So some people have smaller mouths, some of them have wider mouths. So you measure from the corner of the mouth up to the eye. So where does it hit on that person's eye? Perhaps, you know, a little bit in from center or out from center, it just depends. But make sure that you focus carefully on who you're drawing and that person's particular measurements, because that's going to be what makes them seem to be exactly who they are when you're creating your drawing. And so that's going to be how we'll start our piece. And so now I'll proceed, now that you can see how I've produced those measurements. So now you can see this is what I've got going on in my drawing. My daughter's sitting in front of me, and now I'm going to start to map out the features a little bit more distinctly. When drawing in the features of the portrait, or when drawing in general, I begin with a lighter colored pencil or a lighter graphite pencil if you prefer, which would be something like an HB or a 2H pencil. The H refers to the hardness of the pencil and will create a lighter line for you. I then utilize the measurements that we just mapped out to define the basic shapes and forms of the face. I do not add smaller details until later. So I should not see things like eyelashes or shading at this point in the drawing. I find that students tend to want to finish items piece by piece, and this is not the way to go. It is important to work in layers, going across the entire face first with mapping out proportion and scale, then basic shapes and forms, and only adding the details and value later as one finishes off the piece, as you will see me do here. The hair is another issue. You must fight the urge to quickly scribble in a mass of lines, assuming that it's just a bunch of stuff. Any lines that you make on the portrait should be specific and particular to that individual. If there are too many hairs for you to make sense of and you get frustrated, remember that you aren't required to draw every single individual hair, nor should you. However, if you want to draw them all, then have at it. But make sure that you are looking at your subject and you're being specific and paying attention to every strand as you would when drawing a person's eyes. All elements of a person's head come together to make them the person that they are. So you see here, I have now switched to a mid-color pencil to help me define edges a bit more. If you're working with a graphite pencil, this would be when you switch to a softer pencil like a B or a 2B. The B stands for pencil's blackness, and at this point I'm still not concerned with too many tiny details, just the specifics of the most important elements that are there. I slow down at this point and draw with confidence in knowing that I have mapped out the face correctly in my previous stage. So if you make mistakes or you need to make corrections, these should all be done during that first layer with the lightest pencil so that the corrections can be made easily. So here you see me mapping out a few more details than before, but most definitely not full detail. I believe that drawing is much like painting and that one should develop the work in layers, and so you will see me also develop my paintings in a similar way. It is easy to think of drawing as just a one-off thing and then you're done, but you'll find that if you try this method that your drawings have much more form, depth, and richness to them in the end. This is not like paint or draw by numbers where you draw an outline and fill it in. This is a process that builds over time, and you see an image appear from an abstract sketchiness and build into greater and greater detail until you finish. With this drawing, I am using water-soluble pencils. I really enjoy using these in particular. I like these Derwent Intense pencils, which give me an intense color. Many so-called cheap watercolor pencils have very pale pastelist kind of looking color, which I don't really like that much. And so you see the blues come out here when I add water with a brush to this piece. This also allows me to quickly get some value developed across the entire face. I admit that I don't do as many large-scale drawings, and that is simply due to the slowness of the process. You are utilizing a tiny point of a pencil when with painting you can much more quickly fill out a space. So with these water-soluble pencils, I found a way to speed up the process for myself. And you can also purchase water-soluble graphite pencils if you're working in graphite. I love those as well. So at this point, you notice that I put down the paintbrush. I then switched to my final darkest indigo pencil, and if I were working with graphite, I would switch to my blackest pencil, a 9B, or perhaps an ebony pencil, which I like quite a lot. This is where I define the smallest details. It is also important to develop the drawing as a whole, like I said, and to treat all of these features of the face as equal. The eyes are not more important than the nose or the mouth in depicting the individuality of a person, or even hairstyle, for instance. So here in the end, you see my final drawing. Hey, so now I have this wonderful portrait of my daughter that I'm going to take a quick photo of while I'm still outside. So I'm going to set this down here, but I want to take a photo of it with my snazzy iPad here. So you go to your camera app, as you know, because you want to get a nice good photograph of that drawing that you made that you can then utilize to create a digital painting of. And so now I have that on my iPad. I'm ready to go inside and work on my iPad alone, just doing my digital painting. Okay, so now I'm here with my computer and my iPad. I'm going to get into my iPad, and then I'm going to first find that photograph that I took of my daughter outside, which I have here, but then I also have an image of the drawing that I made the other day. So the first thing I want to do is grab that drawing and actually do a little bit of editing. So crop it down so that it's to the size that I want it to be. Straighten it up if needed. And perhaps lighten it up or brighten it up if you think that that's necessary. So you know all the aspects of how you can edit your photographs. It's pretty self-explanatory. So just lighten up the highlights a bit, and then I'll call that good. It's saving the photo. So now what I can do is get out of that photo app and go into Procreate. So within Procreate, obviously you have your sort of gallery of other things that you've already done, which you can see I've tried this out before. But if you click the photo area there in the top right, then you can find that photo that you just edited, and mine is just right there, and it will import it directly into Procreate. Now I can work within Procreate and play around. So the first thing I want to do is actually create a new layer, so that I'm drawing actually on top of the drawing that I made originally, so that I won't ruin it as I draw. I'm pretty new with using Procreate. So my goal is to really just use the software to play around and not like overburden myself with worrying about making perfection, because that's really just not gonna help me much to stress about it. But I'm just gonna see what kind of brushes are out there, what kind of marks I can make. So I want to start by just kind of getting some flesh tone on her face, trying to work, you know, from the larger areas to the smaller perhaps. Now play around, there's a lot of really fantastic brushes as you can see. I kind of really like this oil paint brush. The gouache one is really a great basis to start with, has some really nice texture to it. Well, I tried to first work fairly transparently, use a larger brush to start. Make sure your pen is turned on. I have a habit of forgetting to turn it on. There you go, I've got my little blue dot, which shows that I've got my pen turned on. So with this one, this is quite pale, but it's kind of nice to give a bit of a foundation to her face. So that's really how I start. So later I'll show you a stop motion version of this, but I wanted to, you know, have the chance to talk you through some aspects of what I was working on. I'm a painter, you know, I want my work to look, you know, painterly. And honestly, I've been fairly skeptical of, you know, working with digital painting in the past, just because my talent happens to be as an oil painter. So, you know, I wasn't sure that I could get exactly the effects that I want from using something like Procreate or the iPad. But now things have gotten to the point where they're so advanced that actually you get some really nice soft effects if you play around with it enough and build up your layers. So the important thing really for me and for you is to think about, you know, this piece as a series of layers, much the same way that you would think of a painting. If you don't, if you just, you know, fill in, you know, solid shapes or solid colors, it's gonna look like a flat object. And I want her to look like, you know, a living human being. So I might do like kind of a rough bit of flesh on her face to start, vary my brushes. And also like this smudge tool is really nice, helps you to kind of like smudge things together in case you made a mistake, or even like kind of push the color around a bit in case that you've got too much in one area or another. So I kind of enjoy playing with that too. So you can see I've got a bit of pinkness around in her face. So then I might also like give a little bit of coloring to the hair just to kind of rough it out to start. And then I'll start even building up more layers as I go. So let's maybe go with the oil paint brush for the hair, which is kind of nice. Gives a little bit of texture. Again, not too strong, a bit more transparent. So I've just been kind of getting used to the feel of the brush and how it works with the screen. I don't know, it's just a matter of playing around. And really this is how, you know, I started using software back in the day. You know, you really learn by doing, I would say. I might add a couple of different colors, browns to the hair before moving on. So she's getting a bit of softness in the face there. And then what I might even do at this point is go back and add a third layer, you know, and then start working on greater amount of details. So I might say, you know, I would build up even up to 5 layers on this as I go. So as you work with Procreate, as you can see, it's really handy to be able to zoom in and out on different parts of the image, and really, like, I could really focus on, you know, the details of the eyes or the lips in different sections. That's something I kind of like. And also being able to like angle it a bit more. And remember, there's always the undo if you make a mistake. Decided I want these eyes to be a little bit more transparent as I'm coloring them in.
With the digital painting, you will notice that I very often switch colors and switch brushes. I also change the size and transparency of the brushes often as I develop the colorization and form of the face. The blue of my original drawing underneath provides a unifying base for the whole piece and helps to create unique color combinations throughout as I build other transparent colors on top. So all of this together gives depth and complexity to the piece. As you look at my time-lapse screenshot of this, Notice that I'm not only using local color to build the flesh tones. By local color, I mean that I'm not simply filling in her face with peachy color that exactly matches her skin tone. First off, my original drawing is blue, which provides an interesting base color. Then I build up her flesh, and I use other colors in addition to pinks and peaches, such as purples and greens. Color really brings her to life, and if I had more time with this, I would continue to build up more and more so that in the end, the effect would be both realistic but also somewhat painterly.
So here you have the two sort of finished portraits. I'm pretty happy with the results. Thank you all for joining me on this next demonstration on how to take something that you know really well and translate it through something that you don't know as well with some surprising results. I'm really happy with how this portrait of my daughter turned out in Procreate, and so that's encouraged me to try out some new media again in the future. And hopefully I've taught you a few new techniques on maybe different ways of considering a painterly approach to working with your digital images. Hopefully, I'll see you doing lots of layering, playing around with brushes and colors and transparency, much like an oil painter would do. And I hope to see you again on my next demonstration. And thanks for joining me this time. Bye.